Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and in today's video we're going to be going over Town Portal Scroll. And I know TP Scroll is a pretty basic item. Everyone kind of knows what it does and how to use it to some extent, but I think for newer players it is important to go over and cover this item just to give some basics about how to best use it, when to use it, those kinds of things, just in a general overview of the strategy for the game. So to start off, TP Scroll costs 100 gold, and it's basically its own unique item that has a unique inventory slot, so you don't have to take up one of your 6 inventory slots with a TP Scroll. That used to be different in the past. Actually, you had to have a TP in your actual inventory, which is kind of insane, but that was a long time ago. So thankfully, TP Scroll has its own little spot that you have. You start off the game with one of them. You can buy more. You can buy a bunch of them if you want. Every time you die, you get one for free, which is a benefit to dying. You save a little bit of gold there, where in the past that wasn't the case. And what this does is basically it has an active component where for 75 mana, you can TP to pretty much any building that you own in the game. So any tower, so tier 1, tier 2, anything like that, anywhere in your base. And most importantly, you can double click the item to teleport back to your fountain. So no matter where you are on the map, if you double click TP Scroll, you will TP directly back to your fountain. Then one additional thing I wanted to mention as well is that if you go into the options, it is important, I think, to have this option turned on. If you go to game and then unit orders, under the channels here, it says teleport requires hold/cancel to stop. And basically what this means is that I think by default, I actually haven't had this turned off for a long time, but I think by default, if you go into the settings, this is not on, and you will just cancel your TP by right-clicking on the map or right-clicking anywhere. Like you will TP and then you'll go to walk, you'll issue another command or whatever, and then your hero will cancel the TP scroll, and that can be sometimes for new players something that just screws them up a lot. Like they just cancel TPs all the time, whether it's back to the lane in the laning stage or back to base or wherever they're trying to go. So I definitely recommend having this option on so that when you're TPing, you basically have to deliberately press the S key to stop your hero, which S is usually bound to stop, I think, by default, and that stops basically all actions, anything that you're doing, and that can be any kind of channeled ability, whether it's an ultimate or it's TPing back to base or to a tower. You actually deliberately have to press S to stop that, and that will pretty much universally stop you from canceling your TP unintentionally. So now I'll show you a little bit of how that works. So we have Jug here, and I picked this hero for a specific reason, which I'll show you in a second. But no matter where we are on the map, like if we're in our base or even if we're out here at any kind of lane where the creeps are, if we just double click the TP scroll, like I said, it'll TP you right back to fountain. And for me, I have this as V. It's something that's a little bit further away from my reach in terms of my finger, so I'm not accidentally hitting it. I think that's very important to have a hotkey for this that is not going to be accidentally pressed, and you can just double click it, and then I'm TPing right back to fountain. You will always go here. So that is one thing to know, just for the sake of, let's say, Sunstrike or Ice Blast. There are some spells where the enemy can kind of aim it because they know where you're going to TP. So in some cases, it might actually be a good idea to TP over here or something if you can afford to do that. But that's very rare. For the most part, you're always going to TP right back there when you double click. Then, like I said before, it has its own unique inventory slot. You can buy multiple of them. You can even have a shortcut to buy this. I don't usually use that. I usually just click on it, but you can have a shortcut just to actually buy TP scrolls very quickly. That can be something that you do kind of in your quick buy shortcuts there, but I don't really focus too much on that. You can almost have as many as you want here. It is important to note, though, that there is an 80-second cooldown, which is very important because you don't want to be wasting your TP scroll. Definitely in the early part of the game, the laning stage, if you die, you're always going to be TPing out to the lane. That is something you're going to be doing and don't really have to worry about for the most part. It's not something you really need to think about. But once it gets to 8 to 10 minutes and past that, it is important to note that you have a decent cooldown on your TP scroll. So if you're TPing to the other side of the map, you're kind of stuck there for a while. So let's just pretend that right now it's 15 minutes in the game and I just TP to this tier 1. Well, now as a Jug, I have this lane to farm, these creeps to farm, and then I can go back through this jungle. But if the enemy knows that I'm here, they can try to hunt me down because I can't really get out. I have to run back to base or run back through the jungle if I'm going to, avoid getting ganked or something like that. So that is important to note. The other thing is, if I TP'd out here to farm, let's say, at 10, 15, 20 minutes, I now don't have my TP available to TP to mid tier 1 or top or wherever else another fight might be breaking out. And this is especially important on a hero like Jug or any kind of carry, because knowing when to show up to fights is a huge part of Dota. You want to farm, but you also want to use that farm and those levels to fight. But if you're not fighting, if you don't have a TP scroll, if you're not available, well, then your teammates are just going to be fighting perhaps maybe 4-on-5. You know, sometimes there'll be 3-on-3 skirmishes, different people will be fighting around the map. That certainly happens, but a huge part of Dota is knowing when to use this item. It's one of the biggest fundamental aspects, and people even up to 5K, 6K, even I will sometimes misuse TP scroll because it is such a fundamental and difficult item to use right every single time. Then one reason I picked Jug is to show you that you can TP with Blade Fury on, or if you have Lifestealer with Rage on, or if you buy a BKB when you press BKB, which can be extremely beneficial, not only because that allows you to farm certain areas on the map and be a little bit, you know, safer, but it just allows you to get out of jail free if you end up screwing up and the enemy comes trying to gank you. You can just press Blade Fury and then TP out in the middle of Blade Fury, and that way you have that debuff immunity happening at the same time that you're TPing, and it's very difficult for the enemy to then cancel the TP, because TP can be canceled as a channeled spell basically by stuns or roots or those kinds of things. And so if you're using this and TPing, they really only have a few options. If they have like Axe Call or Black Hole or Chronosphere or Pudge Ultimate, like there are only a few spells in the entire game, or Abyssal Blade is really the only item that can actually cancel this TP when you have Blade Fury going or BKB going. And so that's one strong aspect of heroes like Jug or heroes like Lifestealer, is to combine that with TP, which allows you to farm other parts of the map that you otherwise on another carry wouldn't be allowed to farm or wouldn't be able to farm, or would be dangerous to farm. So keep that in mind. That is why these kinds of heroes are somewhat balanced around the fact that they can kind of extend themselves to other parts of the map if there's no BKB canceling spell on the enemy team. And then one thing I wanted to mention before we end the video is I already kind of talked about how important it is on cores to not waste your TP scroll, to understand when to use it to farm and when to show up to fights. Obviously, every hero uses TP scroll. Every single hero has them, but I didn't yet mention that as a support, it's also very, very important to understand that when you die, because you're going to be dying a lot more on support, that's just how Dota works, that you don't really want to be using TP scroll to immediately TP back to lane to get into the action as quickly as possible. Sometimes that is appropriate. Like you die, you want to come back, you want to go right to Roche, or you want to go right to the fight because another fight's going to break out right then, or you need to protect a hero, so you're going right to them as quickly as possible. But a lot of times you actually want to walk out from your base to wherever you're going to go, because you want to save that TP scroll to TP across the map to another fight. That is really, really relevant from like 8 minutes to especially like 30 minutes. Probably 20 to 30 minutes is the time where, okay, now you're grouping up as 5 or at least 4 like constantly, so you don't have to worry about TPing across the map as much, but still, a lot of times as a support, you don't want to be wasting it as soon as you respawn. So just keep that in mind. That's the last thing I wanted to mention about TP scroll. And that, everyone, is TP scroll. I hope that helped anybody that's a new player, especially, to understand this item. It is a complicated item. Even though it seems relatively simple, it can be pretty difficult to use even at higher levels. Like, people are going to make mistakes when they use this item because it is so fundamental to the game. So as always, guys, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.